I'm Kitty Klitzke. I'm the City Council representative for the 3rd District of Spokane. That's the Northwest District of Spokane.
All right, Kitty. What is your favorite car-free way to get around Spokane?
I still prefer walking. I think of myself as a pedestrian, and it can be slow and time-consuming, but you see so much more, and it kind of gives you some time to think. I think some of our great writers and thinkers in history have been pedestrians and pretty committed to walking, and I know it really helps me as well.
Have you ever lived a car-free or car-light lifestyle, and what were the benefits and challenges you experienced?
I've had a couple different times in my life where I was car-free. I didn't get my driver's license until I was 24, so active duty in the military, I didn't have a driver's license, and then when I was back in Spokane, I was car-free until, I don't remember what year I turned 24, but until I was 24. I bought a home in Northeast Spokane right when I got back from the Army, and the bus service was not great back then, and then I ended up at one point with a job way up at North Point, and I had to take my bike up there because there just wasn't enough transit service, and that could be pretty tiring. I was trying to be in the Army Reserve, go to college and work, and I was a homeowner, and it was pretty exhausting. I think if we had had the transit service that we have now, my life would have been completely different. So distance is a big challenge. Like where you choose to live really affects what you can do with your lifestyle. And I ended up giving up my house and moving to Brown's Addition because it was just unsustainable at that time, and it really helped my career to be able to not have to maintain a car and not have a mortgage and just be able to focus on work for a certain time. So, and then when I lived in Brown's Addition, I was also car-free again, and I did that until my daughter got into public school, so probably like 2018 is when I started driving again. In Brown's Addition, that was quite easy. When we moved to West Central, it extended my range a little bit, so started having to walk a lot further or take the bus more or ride my bike more. But by then I was pretty well adapted to not driving. So, but it became a challenge. Like when I had a stroller, it turns out my daughter doesn't like the dark when she's in a stroller, so coming home from downtown through Kendall Yards on the Centennial Trail, there's a section of complete dark, and even though my stroller lit up, it didn't really light up the area for my baby to see, and so she would kind of freak out in late September, early October when I'm coming home from work and it's starting to get pretty dark.
That was wonderful. Thank you for all the examples. What do you see as the most pressing issue for those who do not drive in Spokane? So examples could be transit access, safe streets, or transportation.
I think all three of those things are important, but I think affordable locations is the biggest issue. It's not open to many people anymore to be able to be like, okay, I'm going to make a choice. I want to go car-free. I'm going to move close to work. That was an affordable choice for me back when I chose to move to Brown's Addition in 2003. I think my first apartment, my rent was only like $600 a month, and I had a roommate. And then when I decided to go with no roommate, I found a place for $350. And so that was easy for me to do. Now it's not so easy. Rents are quite high. There's less places available. So being able to relocate in an area where you can get around by your mode of choice is a lot more difficult now than it was when I was a young person trying to start my career. And I would love to see us be able to have more transit-oriented development and affordable places for folks to live so that they have that choice, because a car, it's not only not a great investment, it can be a real barrier for folks if they feel like they have to have a car to go to work, to go to college, to go to the grocery store.
How do you aim to improve conditions for non-drivers in Spokane?
I have a lot of goals for improving the situation for non-drivers in Spokane. One thing I'm working really hard on right now is state legislation to allow us to have a sidewalk utilities so that we have dedicated funding to build out and repair our sidewalk system. There are a lot of barriers for folks on wheels, folks in strollers, folks who are sight impaired to using our transportation system. And I get a lot of feedback from the folks that are determined enough to do it anyway. and there's too many barriers out there. So improving the pedestrian environment, I think, is the baseline thing that we need to do, because every trip starts with some amount of walking, even if you're a driver or a cyclist. I think continuing to build out the frequency and the penetration of our transit system is another huge range extender for pedestrians and cyclists. I know when I first started having to commute as a cyclist in the late 90s, we had one of our first bike lanes on Maple, and I was so excited. I was like, I'm going to stop using Hamilton, I'm going to go up Maple to get to North Point. And I tried it a couple of times, and people just turned right on top of me. It wasn't a well-designed bike lane, and people were not habituated to bike lanes. There was no one checking their mirrors before they turned into their driveways, and there's a lot of housing along Maple. I think things have gotten a lot better, but I would still love to see a much better, more grade-separated network of bicycle infrastructure, or bicycle infrastructure that's separated from arterials by using a parallel route with a lot of safe crossings. So those are something I'd really like to see. I think 27 by 27 is a step in that direction, but we really need more funding to make those pieces of infrastructure more safe and robust to protect cyclists. And those are kind of the three branches, I think, for non-motorized transportation: is cycling infrastructure, pedestrian infrastructure, and transit infrastructure. But the other part is land use, making sure that we're containing our growth to an area that we can adequately service with all of the infrastructure that people need to have the lifestyle of their choice, which includes being able to walk and bike. And so making sure that we have the density that we need to be able to afford to support that kind of infrastructure is also important.
What activities would you suggest for a car-free afternoon in Spokane?
So in Spokane, that so depends on where you live. So if I had to pick a neighborhood outside of my own neighborhood, I'd say a lot of the more suburban neighborhoods with less walking infrastructure, sometimes it's still safe to walk in the streets. They're very low traffic, as long as the city makes sure that they're sweeping those streets. And I feel that we should prioritize sweeping the streets with no sidewalks first. And I have not won that battle yet, but I'm working on it. But if you live in one of those neighborhoods, usually there's a lot of decent parks that you can walk to and have a nice time. But if you're further into the city core, almost everybody has a bakery or a coffee shop that they can walk to. That is something I just love to do. That's part of my ideal lifestyle. And one of the reasons I chose Brown's Edition when I chose a car-free life is because of Cabin Coffee that was there when I was younger, and the Elk. And we also had access to a little kind of newsstand type business when I was younger. But yeah, I mean, just having a chill Saturday where you don't have to do anything and you can just follow your bliss is nice. We have an amazing Centennial Trail that folks can also get really far on now and spend some time. But yeah, I could answer that question for every neighborhood, I think, and find a really good itinerary for you. So feel free to call if you ever want to help plan your Saturday afternoon for a car-free day. I've got tips.
That would be a really fun series of Kitty does one for every neighborhood. You've got plenty of content. That was great. We just have a couple more here for you. This one is about going around when you're outside of a car. Are there any parts of town where you feel unsafe when you're not driving a vehicle?
I think I've had my worst experiences on the bike on Washington. When I'm going up to donate blood, it's a very hostile to bikes situation there, and I don't like riding on the sidewalk. I try to be in the street, but that's a very hard place to be in the street. As a pedestrian, one of my least favorite places to walk is trying to get down. It's gotten a little better since Uprise Brewing opened and kind of activated the area, but trying to get down to the Maple Street Bridge, the terrible stairway, the chain link tunnel, and then another terrible stairway. I avoid that, and it's technically safe as far as the infrastructure. It's grade separated, but it's so uncared for and so poorly thought out that that's probably my least favorite place to walk.
What is your experience like traveling outside of a car versus inside? So examples would be how you connect to your neighbors, how spontaneous you are in a car versus outside of a car, what things you smell or notice.
I'm a terrible, terrible navigator, so I have a lot of really unpleasant experiences in cars because I arrive to places before I'm ready to orient myself. And so for me, walking is just so much better for me to feel confident where I'm going, have time to realize, like, am I heading the right direction? Is this the place where I need to turn? But also, yes, you have so much more interaction with your neighbors, with their landscaping. So you get a lot of garden envy and things. But also just nature. We have a ton of urban wildlife in this community. The birding opportunities are pretty good in the spring and fall. Our skies can be pretty stunning, and you cannot see that in a car. We have a lot of months with really pleasant weather most days. And the experience of the seasons. I don't think it's true in Spokane that there's no such thing as bad weather. There are definitely parts of the year where our weather can actually be dangerous, but most days it's pretty amazing, and it is nice to get out there and experience those seasonal changes. I think that's why people choose to live here, is to experience those 4 seasons, and we're lucky to be able to do that.
Why do you care about the Week Without Driving, and how would you encourage others to take part?
Well, as someone who spent many years without driving, I think it's just so valuable for folks to give it a try if they can. I think that it can be challenging with kids, but you can replace trips, especially on the weekend, and find out that it might be a lot easier than you thought it was going to be, especially with our improved transit service. It's so much easier to ride the bus than people think it is. There's so many routes now where you don't really even have to check the schedule, which has been a dream of mine before we had better transit service. That was one of my life goals, is to be able to walk out the door and not have to check the schedule, to know that a bus was coming pretty soon. And after that ballot measure passed last time, it took 2 years for my route to get there, but it's there, and I'm so excited. The 21 West Central, that's just a game changer for me, to be able to just walk out the door when I'm ready and know a bus is coming pretty soon, and if I am late, I'm not going to be that late. And the bus is almost never late. So it's a lot easier than people think when you live on a good route. And even when you live on a half-hour route, those routes are usually on time. They're pretty well maintained. So it's a lot more convenient than people think.